Well, in all seriousness, I think a lot of people wonder, when do I need an AC service? When is it appropriate to get an AC service? Man, my car's 3 years old, 4 years old. When do I need an AC service?
Well, we'll get to that, but let's first talk about just the fundamentals, the basics of the air conditioning system, the components that all have to be there and be working before you even have cold air to wonder if you need an AC service. So there's basically 5 major components. I mean, there's hundreds of fuses and relays and components
Pressure
and switches
and
sensors.
bands.
Yeah, but the main deals, what, Jim? First, we'll start with the compressor.
We'll start with your compressor and your condenser. The compressor is the pumping apparatus on the AC system.
It's the heart.
The heart. The condenser is the heat exchanger. The evaporator is
Hold on, slow your roll a little bit now.
Okay.
So the condenser is going to be, that's the high side pressure of the high side of the system, and that's going to be out in front of the radiator.
Correct.
So we want that there to remove heat from the air conditioning system to help condense the liquid or the gas, the refrigerant. So then we're going to come out of the condenser and probably go to dryer or receive or accumulator, depending on which type of system.
And then we're going to go to the orifice tube, which is the metering device, if you want to call it. Orifice tube.
Basically, the way we get cool is that we are just changing the state of the refrigerant or the gas from a liquid to a vapor and from a vapor back to a liquid and back and forth. So it's going to be pressurized on one end. Your high side, there's 2 sides to it. The high side, the pressure side, and then there's the low side.
Which still has pressure, but yeah.
Correct.
And then so the refrigerant is going to travel through the expansion valve or the orifice tube, where it's going to change that state from a high pressure gas to a lower pressure, really cold liquid and go into the
evaporator.
Well, I know when I was in the transmission business, or in the tire business, I'm in the transmission business now, but people would always come in and say, my car needs more coolant. And they think their car needs more coolant because their air conditioner is not blowing cold. And that's like the number one misconception I see, is that it needs more coolant. But there's Freon, or refrigerant, which is a gas, and then there's coolant for the engine, which is something totally different. If your car is overheating, you may have a coolant issue. If your car is not blowing cool enough or just cool, you may be low on refrigerant or Freon.
Yes, but and at the same time, using the air conditioner is definitely going to tax or work your cooling system.
Also,
you've got mitigating factors. Number one, it's just hot. It's 100 and whatever, and then on top of that, you've got the extra load of the air conditioning unit drawing on the engine. So
it does create more heat for the engine.
Yeah, an extra load. So you've got to have both systems. The cooling system has to be working right in order for the air conditioning system to function properly, and they go together.
Well, we've talked about some buzzwords and some components, but back to my original. When do I need a service? And I don't know. I think when you need a service when there's something wrong, or it doesn't feel like it's cooling or doing the job. But otherwise, it's not just, I'm just going to swing down and get an AC service.
Well, yeah, it's not like you've got to go in every year and get an air conditioning service. Now, there's some components in the air conditioning that should be serviced annually, and they're not major components like we talked about. We talked about 5, and the 6th would be the blower motor, or the part that's going to make the airflow inside the car. But one part that needs annual service is your cabin air filter, your pollen filter, interior microparticulate filter. I mean, there's all kinds of different names, but the bottom line, it's an interior filter, just like the interior filter in your home that you should be changing once a month.
Well, I mentioned before that my air conditioning stinks. Well, the cabin filter is a good source for stink as they get old and mildew gets built up in the cabin filter. That's something that our listeners, some of them are easy to get to and relatively inexpensive. They can change themselves. They don't have to go down to the store or get their car into a repair shop to get it done.
Well, there's some simple stuff, and we'll get to that later. but yeah, I mean, but as far as back to your question, when do I need service? You're going to be the best gauge of that. When you're not comfortable in your car, you know you're due for some sort of service or repair. In a perfect world, the air conditioning is not going to leak any of the refrigerant. So chances are, if your system is not working well, you've got a leak. And you start off with a service. Jim, I mean, when you're going to do a service, no more just shooting the can. I'll get a can guy, my buddy will shoot one in there for me. You need to do a proper service.
You need to have a proper recycle, recharge equipment. system, which you guys have talked about in the past, system charges are so critical. We're talking like less than 2 pounds. Some are, a little over a pound. So just going in and topping off an AC system is not going to work on today's cars.
In the old days, we had a sight glass right on top of the dryer, and we could see if there was bubbles in there. Well, let's shoot some more in it.
And then you'd use your handometer too, and check that out, and you'd be good.
Is it hot or is it cold?
Right.
Well, but the rules have really changed. But your car may be blowing hot just simply because you have a pressure switch that's bad, or it may be blowing hot because you have a condenser fan that's getting weak or not working at all. So there's a lot of reasons that it can blow hot where...
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of different things. We had a woman come into the shop yesterday, late model Toyota, like a 2004 Celica. And she said, do I need an air conditioning service? Well, I don't know. How does it feel good to you? Yeah, it's really good. I said, well, we'll check it anyway. So, we don't just shoot a can in. We recover. We're going to take everything out of the system, measure. In this case, I think the car holds 1.4 pounds of refrigerant. This car was blowing cold or cool. It only had 0.4 of a pound of refrigerant in it when we recovered it. It holds 1.4.
Still working.
She was a pound low and still was pretty satisfied with the air conditioning.
But you got 10 more degrees out of it when you did that.
Yeah, our test, it was, in the heat of the day, 111 degrees. We had like 39 degrees out of the vents. So the question is, when do I know I need an AC service? So you're sitting in your car. Well, it's just going to be miserably hot. If you didn't have covered parking and you were sitting out yesterday in 111 degrees, the car is just heat soaked. Everything's burning hot. But maybe you start off in the morning. It's 80, 85, 90 degrees. The air conditioning feels nice and cold in the morning. But then you had covered parking and you came outside and it was still 111, but the car wasn't baking in the sun and it just doesn't cool off. Well, that's a symptom that you need an air conditioning service, just not getting any cold air. Another symptom that you needed service is obviously it's more than a symptom. It's a problem. It's just not working.
It's
blowing hot air, or it's not blowing at all. Or maybe you have just not very good airflow. Perhaps you have a plugged up cabin air filter.
Well, so before the break, I said how to communicate to the shop what is going on with your car. So I come in, I'm not feeling airflow. That's one concern and one thing to describe.
Well, there's going to be several questions, and Jim will get in on this with us. So we want to know, and these are questions that you need to be prepared to answer, that your service advisor that you're going to be communicating this problem with, that they're going to want to know. So one of the things is, first off, is it blowing? Does it even blow at all?
Right.
That's the first step. Second step.
Is it cooling, or what does the outlet temperature feel like? Does it feel lukewarm? Is it cool? Is it slightly cold? So once you've determined that there is airflow coming from your blower motor, you need to tell the technician or the service advisor what that temperature feels like to you.
Is it muggy? Is it humid feeling? Is it just not good?
Well, you can pick up that little meat thermometer looking thing, and some people just have them in their vents.
I've got one driving around with me all the time.
You just kind of want to know how the air conditioning's doing, but that's a little bit more objective versus I think it's cool or cold.
Well, but if you bought your car new, or even if you had it a while, you've got a feeling of what's right or not right.
I don't know. Yesterday, my car's brand new. I didn't think it was blowing cool, but it was just hot.
But yours is black.
Yeah,
it's in the sun.
So
and then so when you come to me and you're at my counter, I'm going to ask you. They're going to say, I think I need an air conditioning service. Is it cool but not cold, or did it just suddenly stop? Cool but not cold is going to indicate that you're low on charge, more than likely. Sudden failure or sudden stoppage is either going to be some kind of sudden catastrophic failure or a blown fuse, a bad relay, maybe something in the control side of it.
Just click that. So you could have a mechanical problem or just a control problem with the air conditioning. So let's go with Tom on a 2004 GMC Sierra. Go ahead, Tom. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Thank you, gentlemen. With the Sierra, I have the dual zone heating and cooling.
Sure.
On the passenger side, works fantastic. Cold, heat, both. On the driver's side, sometimes not so cold. If you turn it above 3 on the blower motor, it seems to actually get a little warmer. And if you do try to adjust the temperature, it won't even get hot. It just stays at one temperature. So the wintertime, you don't have any heat. But it does work on the passenger side.
Well, I'll tell you. Go
if
ahead,
I
Tom.
do turn it up to 5, it'll start blowing warmer out the driver's side, but the passenger side still stays cold. Matter of fact, it gets really cold.
So, wait a minute, I'm confused. So when you're on heat, the passenger side blows cold, but when you're on
No.
or vice versa?
No, on the passenger side, it works fine either way, hot or cold.
Okay.
On the driver's side, if you tried to put it on heat, even when the air is not working, you don't get any heat out of it.
Well, I
When
think
when you have the air on, it still will not adjust. As a matter of fact, it doesn't even blow as cold as the passenger side.
Okay, well, perfect. See, what you've done now, you are the service advisor's dream customer. You've just brought me all the information that we need to put in so that we can relay that message to the technician. And your service advisor should be writing down what you said, not what their interpretation of what you said is. But it sounds to me, Jim, I don't know if you would agree, I think there's two different problems.
I think there's two different problems, and one could be the blend door, which is allowing, because it sounds like it has his and her air, or right side, left side air, and if the driver's side of the vehicle is not getting that cool temperature, it could still be allowing warm air to get to that driver's side through the ductwork.
Well, so low charge.
Low charge
Whenever you have driver's side, passenger side, separate air, dual zone, that's a common complaint, and usually it's a low charge. So as far as that goes, Tom, I think a low charge or having a system service, if you can identify a leak, great. We use dye to do that. We use electronic sniffers, for lack of a better word, to try and find those leaks and get that part working and get it cold. That will probably take care of your dual zone problem. But it sounds like in the wintertime you have a heat problem, which Jim was talking about, the mode door. And the mode door is just going to direct the airflow. Do you want hot over the heater core, or do you want cold over the air conditioning condenser, or do you want 74 degrees so you get a lot of air conditioning and a little bit of heat? So I think you have two problems, Tom, and that's something that you definitely need to have checked out by a professional. So,
I mean, I'm just rolling the last 10, 15 phone calls through my head about air conditioning. In blend door is always coming up. So maybe we should clarify what a blend door is. But basically, it's a gate inside the ductwork that's going to direct the air either to the dash or to the defroster.
That's
a mode door.
Mode door.
Sorry,
mode
fellas.
door is
I'm just
defroster,
a
vent,
transmission
or
guy.
floor. Defroster, vent, or floor.
Okay.
And a blend door is going to blend the air,
Hot and cold air.
the hot and the
Correct.
cold, yeah. So sometimes, I mean, we get a car in that's not going, it's not blowing cold, but it's got a full charge. Now what? That's when we start looking at the blend door, the heater control valve. Are we letting hot air or hot water into the heater when we shouldn't be? So that's a whole nother section of service. I mean, you come in and we charge it, but we still have warm air. Now we're into the functions of all the electronic controls in the dash panel, which, old school
It was
vacuum controls
pretty
is
simple.
fairly simple.
We had a cable that ran off that hot or cold, just back and forth with the cable. And now then we had vacuum controls. We've moved away from vacuum controls of those blend doors or mode doors. Now it's all
in-car sensors.
It's all electric. A lot more complicated than it used to be in the old days. In his and hers, you know how many arguments have been saved with his and hers air conditioning?
Just get your side a little warmer over there. I'll take my side cool. So
Let's go with Jose on a 2001 Dodge 1500. Go ahead, Jose. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, my air conditioner, it starts blowing out cold air, and then all of a sudden, it's like, I think you answered my question. It's just like the door flips open, and it's like I turned the heater on.
So just all of a sudden while you're driving, it's nice and cold, and then it just, boom, instantly switches to hot? Or
Yep, it instantly switches to hot. It doesn't even come out cool. It's just hot.
Is this when you're accelerating by chance, like you accelerate pretty hard to get on the freeway and all of a sudden it goes hot, or is this at a cruise? You're just cruising down the road?
At any speed.
Any speed.
Like, if I turn the fan on, it's just, I can hear something click, and it's just like if I turn on the heater.
is it okay? Well, it sounds like you're getting a blend door problem if you're just getting heat. Is that like a electronic control, digital, or is it manual where you slide the lever?
No, it's digital.
It's digital.
Button.
But I know they are on an 01 Dodge. It's going to be vacuum controlled componentry.
No, his is digital. So if it's digital,
I drove an 01 Dodge. It's not digital.
His is nicer than yours. He's got, if it's digital, it's going to have the electronic mode door actuator. So you're probably having a mode door that's that's dropping out, losing control. Jim?
Or you could have a compressor that's cycling off on the low cutoff side and then not turning back on if it goes all of a sudden hot.
Jose, when you say hot, does it feel like superheated air or just ambient temperature?
It's like when you turn on the heater and you need it in the wintertime.
It's a mode door problem, and that's going to be, any shop that's should be in business should be able to handle that. If they can't, they shouldn't be. But so if you've got one, great. That's something that you're going to want to get in. That's cumbersome work up underneath the dash. It's not anybody's favorite work either.
If you want me to take a dump in a box and mark it guaranteed, I will. But for now, for your customer's sake, for your daughter's sake, you might want to think about buying a quality product.
All right, you got it. So parts. Speaking of parts, and Jim, this is one thing that I know you can talk about. I mean, the shop. So here you are. The shop calls you. You've already determined you're dropping your car off. You have an air conditioning problem, and you're going to get one of 3 phone calls more likely. First one is we evacuated, recharged the system. We used some type of dye or leak detection device to try and find any leaks, and we can't find any. So the good news is you're going to leave here blowing cold today. And you may blow cold for 2 days, 2 weeks, or 2 years. We don't know. So you're the test pilot. You're going to report back to us.
It's a two-step system, really.
Yeah, exactly. So then we're going to check for leaks. And then the second type of phone call you might get is we did all that and we found a
failed compressor, Mrs. Johnson, or a leaky hose assembly.
Okay. So the hose.
We've got our complaint, we've got our cause, and now we're going to go for the cure. And the cure is important because when you're going to spend that much money on an AC job, you want to have a good quality part installed on the vehicle.
And then we talk about quality parts. Now, I can buy a compressor at Acme Auto Parts for $234, and I can buy a quality, say, like Denso or Delphi or whatever one of the other original equipment suppliers is, and that one's $400. It's $175 difference or whatever the math is for a reason.
Yes. Well, and you don't want to. You put a cheap compressor on there and it grenades. It's going to send metal throughout the system. You're going to end up, replace it a condenser later on down the road. And
the shop doesn't want to do the job twice. You don't want to be back there for the same thing. So they're going to go ahead and recommend, let's do this job right the first time, so we can eliminate the, dump in a box.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, we're going to take Bob from Scottsdale on his 2009 Chevy Equinox. Bob, what can we help you with today?
Morning, guys. My air is working fine, but this is a transmission question. An Equinox with 66,000 miles, is it too late to have the transmission serviced? And should I just let it go, or is it still okay to service it, to have the fluid and the filter changed?
Yeah, absolutely. It is not too late at all. I would definitely recommend, you're going to take it to a qualified shop who can identify that there is no pre-existing transmission issues. As long as there's no issues, and I really doubt you're having any issues at 66,000 miles, absolutely go in there, change the filter, change the fluid. It'd be crazy not to.
And that's one of those ones, too. That's the marketing department. Doesn't need it till 100,000 miles.
Yes.
So that's not true. I mean, that fluid would probably work just fine till 100,000 miles. And if you're selling the car at 75, well, then who cares? But if you want to take care of your car, you want it to last you 100, 150,000 miles and be trouble-free and have your resale value out of it, don't look at the 100,000-mile marketing manual.
And what you're trying to avoid is you may not keep this car forever. You're trying to avoid buying a transmission before you sell the vehicle and pass it on to the next guy. And when you do sell it, you know it's been serviced and you feel good selling it to the next guy. I've taken care of it. It's gotten all the services it needs. Let's go with Brian from Tempe on a 2005 Pontiac Vibe. Go ahead, Brian. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, guys. Got kind of a strange one that my AC unit, I've had 3 separate occasions where if I've left the car parked in the sun and turned the AC on, the fan hasn't kicked in right away. And it wasn't until I actually backed out, put the car in reverse, backed out of the spot, that the fan would kick in. And since then, I've had some other random electrical problems where I've got the light that's on the dashboard for the headlights will randomly flicker on and off. I've had some issues with the volume dropping on the radio occasionally. And so I'm thinking it's probably more of an electrical system issue than an AC system problem. Any thoughts on that?
I'm kind of thinking a couple electrical things that seem unrelated, but everything goes through the ignition switch. That's what I'm thinking about.
I would say ignition switch is a possible scenario too, because if it's just right in between that, to the run, start, power, all the accessories, you can have some funky things going on in a car.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely don't think it's an air conditioned issue per se, but an electrical issue.
It's one of your symptoms. You've got multiple symptoms. So now what you've got to find is the common denominator. So ignition switch, a lot of the times when we're trying to find those weird problems, if you've got not a lot of stuff on a Pontiac Vibe, big giant keychain usually isn't going to, it's not as bad as it used to be, but still not a good idea. But what I'm getting at is you can drive down the road and try wiggling the key a little bit.
See if it changes
if you can replicate your problem by doing that. If you can't do that and you've done your basics, make sure the battery connections are good. Then it's time for a shop. And you're in Tempe, Joel, Arizona Imports.
And it's like a Toyota vehicle. I know it's a Pontiac, but it's a Toyota.
Pontiac. It's a Toyota with a Pontiac badge. So Joel at Arizona Imports in North Tempe. Greg at ADS, he's on the north side of Chandler or South Tempe.
We've also got Good Works Auto right off the 101 too. So
and those two guys are probably two of the best in Tempe.
Or if he works in Scottsdale and Thomas for me.
Hey, nothing like a shameless plug, huh?
Well, my fact or fiction for the day is we all know how expensive R12 Freon is, and it's like liquid gold, or it could be vapor gold if you want to look at it that way. But I can convert my old R12 system over to R134a, which is much more economical, by simply just changing the fittings, and everything will work just as good. Fact or fiction?
That's what you think, huh?
Yeah, I think so. I'm in the transmission business. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I would say, just simply converting it, you might get lucky if you get, what we call the hairy homeowner kit at AutoZone or something. You put the adapters on and you buy their can of super duper one-size-fits-all sauce and whatever and put that in. It might work. You might do okay with it, but I'm going to say that's it's fact for you can make it work. But it's fiction for done right.
Well, I want to hear what Jim has to say. Then I'm going to give our listeners the right answer.
All right. Well, that's a harsh one. So basically, if you're dealing with a system that's been designed to work on R12. You're going to have operating pressures and temperatures and things like that. So when you go with the 134A, the system efficiency is going to be dramatically decreased because of charge levels and components.
Well, I did a conversion this week. Well, we did a system replacement and then a conversion. All the components were new, and then the car came with R12. It was a Dodge. 92 Dodge, and Jim and I had some discussions about this, and that thing whipped our butts. It was a nightmare, and we had to end up putting a condenser, an auxiliary fan motor on it, pushing more air across the condenser, and it finally worked. But that R134 is just not as efficient as the R12.
Well, I've actually seen it go both ways. I've heard people converting works great, and I've heard people converting and it works terrible. So let's go with, looks like a 2006 Optima. Teresa, go ahead. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, this is Teresa, and I was calling in regards to the car. Every time I start it and turn on the air, it grinds. There's like a belt, something that just whistles.
So it's like a squealing or like a grinding noise?
Like a squealing.
Okay, and is that so? You jump in the car, hit the key, fire it up, and then the first rev maybe, or just it rises, and then right at that point it's going for maybe 3 seconds.
Yeah, just I turn on the car, I turn on the air, and for about 5 to 10 seconds, and then it stops, and then it doesn't come on again, unless I turn the wheel, I try to make a really sharp turn, then it starts to squeal again.
Right. I think I'd lean towards a belt, of course, or a belt tensioner, something that's not allowing the belt tension to be tight, and you're getting that belt losing traction.
So with the load of the air condition and the load of the power steering,
correct,
that's when the belt is squealing.
Right,
so.
Loses traction.
And Teresa, those were
very good,
perfect descriptions to take to the service counter, to the service advisor. And one other thing to think about, we're talking probably a belt squealing. It could be a clutch slipping, but not likely. She would have had an air conditioning symptom probably there, something other than the noise. But on these newer cars, the belts, you can't just look at the belt anymore and see that it's cracked. They don't crack anymore. The design and the style of the belts, the materials, they don't crack. they shed and they lose material. So when that happens, you can't just look at it. You've actually got to use a tool to measure the grooves to see if that belt's worn out. So visual inspection's no good anymore.
So, well, appreciate the call, Teresa. Let's go with Mike on a 97 Ford Escort. Go ahead, Mike. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, how are you doing this morning?
Great, thank you.
What I've got the 97 Escort, and I can put the air condition on normal, and I can drive with it, and I don't have any problems. The air conditioning comes out the ducts, but when I put it on max and I give it the gas, it goes to defrost.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one.
How, Mike, are you mechanically inclined kind of guy? You work on the car, or is it or five thumbs?
I'm not real mechanical, but I thought I would call and see if it might be something I could fix.
Well, you might be. This is a classic symptom of a broken vacuum line. So what happens is the car creates vacuum, and then when the engine's running, and then the controls for the dash, the heating, the air conditioning, whatever, they rely on that vacuum. There's going to be a vacuum storage tank, and then there's going to be lines that are going to run into the firewall. So, a black, or this one would probably be a plastic white line maybe. You're going to want to trace some of those lines and see if you can find a source on the engine where maybe a hose is cracked or disconnected. And when I say vacuum line, I mean it's small, like
spaghetti.
Spaghetti. I was going to say pencil lead, but big, fat spaghetti. And you're going to want to try and find one of those lines. That's a simple. If you can't find it, that fix in most cases, unless it's under the dash, is I would think certainly less than $100, more like $50.
Right, unless there's a one-way check valve too on that vacuum too. But yeah, definitely vacuum problem.
Thanks so much for the call, Mike. Let's go with Terry on a 2001 Saturn. Go ahead, Terry. You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hi, this is Terry. 2003 Saturn. It's an L200 with a 2.2 liter. It's got about 75,000 miles on it. And I just had it at a AC shop, and they checked it out and had to add about a half a pound of AC on it, and they found no leaks. But during the AC check, it was noted that there was a clacking noise coming from the tensioner belt assembly, just right above where the air compressor is. And that clacking was taking place when the AC was on, and when it was turned off, the clacking noise went away. Inside the cab, the air conditioner is good as far as the temperature. It's between 30 and 40 degrees. It's less than what the outside temperature is. Okay, when the AC was off, the tensioner was spinning in a true fashion. It wasn't really, it was just true.
Sure.
But when the AC was back on, the tensioner was spinning but had kind of a slight wobble to it.
Okay.
And my question is, do I have a compressor problem? Do I have a tensioner problem? Or do I have both?
Okay, well, highly unlikely that you have a compressor problem. What's happening there, when you're putting the extra load from the compressor on that belt, it's causing the tensioner to jump around. And we see those tensioners, 75,000 is probably a little premature. We are typically recommending, if we're doing a system replacement, a new belt and a tensioner, because they're usually over 100,000 miles. But that's something you're going to want to just go somewhere, get a belt, have them look at it, have the same AC shop. If that's your trusted shop, go to them. Of course, if it's not, bumpertobumperradio.com. Have them take a look at it. It's probably very simple, a tensioner and a serpentine belt, and probably cure your problem.
Well, in the old days, it was just a belt. We just replaced the belts. We got new belts. But tensioners are a bigger deal, and it's really reminiscent of Teresa's call. I turn the air conditioner on and I get a squeal. It's not necessarily anything wrong with the air condition. It's a problem with the belt or the belt tensioner.
Right.
Causing issues, for sure.
All righty, one more. We're going to take Robert in Phoenix calling on his Cadillac KTAR. Robert, what can we help you with today?
Yeah, I got a KTAR, and it seems like every time when I turn it happens all the time. When I turn the AC unit on, the battery goes dead, the radio will all of a sudden turn off and turn on again, the sunroof goes haywire. I can't figure out what's wrong with it.
Same deal as the Pontiac Vibe probably. You're going to have to, common denominator, you back it all the way up and start with the battery.
Right.
Those Cadillac KTARs, that's the European version. That's really what is that, an Opal?
I think
And
it's
that,
an
that's a
Opal.
good. I'm not,
Yeah, good car.
It's not a negative thing. Don't take it like that.
Kind of Opal Saabish.
It's the Cadillac that zinged.
It's the German version of the Cadillac. It's
Right.
German designed, German built, Cadillac badged. Those are a little bit complicated at times. There's a lot of funky wiring on them there. So that's going to be something that professional.
Yeah.
I mean, the things you're going to do, you can check the battery connections, look around where they're going, make sure the grounds and everything are good. But, that's the extent of it. And one more thing I want to touch on, Dave, though.
I want to touch on
Cabin
it.
air filters.
Cabin air filters, but we didn't. The stink in cabin air filters. The other thing we didn't talk about is fresh air or outside air versus recirculation. And if you're in the car, you're loaded up with the family and the kids and the dog, and you're driving to California, and you're on recirculation, that's not good. I mean, you're breathing a lot of each other's breath.
So recirculation is we're not drawing in any outside air. We're
Correct.
all 5 of us and the dog crammed in this box, regurgitating and flipping the same air. So we want to go to fresh air.
Right.
But what I was getting at was the stink. You get in the car, it's been sitting all day, you fire it up, and you've got this odor. What do we do about it?
What do you do about it?
Well, there are services where we can clean that. There's the mist, where we take 8 ounces of liquid, put it in this special device, remove the cabin air filter, stick it under the dash, and I'm going fast because we're running out of time, and it does this magic. You'll see the whole car looks like dry ice cloud in there. You can do Lysol, change the filter. They've got carbon filters now. Any of those questions, shoot them to us. Facebook, bumpertobumperradio.com.
Well,
Dave, you're up.
You took all my time. Thanks, Jim, for coming in. Thanks, all our listeners, for sharing your Saturday with us. You can find us during the week at bumpertobumperradio.com on the contact page.